We're going to move on this morning. A question for all of you. Who had to pay something in the last couple of days with a credit card? Did you pay with a credit card online? All right, if you did that, so you did. Okay, if you did that, there's probably a company, a B2B company somewhere that made that possible. Our next guest this morning is going to talk about providing platforms for platforms. And he is the head of Northern Europe for a company called Stripe. And he's going to tell us what his company is doing to make it easier, to use a credit card, for example. So give a warm round of applause to Felix Huber.
Thank you. Hello. Very excited to be here, telling you about a platform for platforms. Again, my name is Felix Huber, working at Stripe. Maybe before I get started, just to get a bit of quick sense on how many people here have heard about Stripe. Maybe just a quick show of hands. Yeah? OK, great. So I would say half the people, roughly. Excellent. So Stripe is basically economic infrastructure for businesses. So that means people can build marketplaces, subscription services, all these sort of things on our platform. And of course, of that, money plays a big role. And money, as you probably all know, is a shared product of culture, policy, and technology. And it's actually the combination of a fuel as well as a lifeblood for the global internet economy. And global internet economy is actually a bit of a stretch word because it is actually not that global. So the global internet economy today only represents about 5% of the global economy. So still very small. And not only is it small, it's actually also still very local. So you have basically a very much a local business in Europe, for instance. 16% of those transactions that have already moved online are only cross-border. So it's quite disappointing in a way. And that's sort of where Stripe comes in. And this is our mission, is to increase that GDP of the internet. And so what type of problem are we really solving there? In the past, you had basically, if you want a business and you want to create something new, you want to have a new business line, or you have a new idea, you had to deal with so much complexity. I mean, some of you have maybe done this in the past. You had to deal with acquirers and PSPs and banks and all that sort of stuff, and it took a long time, and you had to spend a lot of energy in integrating with all these parties. And that was basically the state for the longest time, and that's sort of where we felt, okay, that's not quite what it's supposed to be, right? Because you should be shielded from all this complexity, and you should have one-stop shop. And again, let's take a simple example how that has happened in other industries. If you take, for instance, 10 years ago or so, you had a data center, and you would have your own hardware, and someone would go out and buy hardware and put it in a rack, and then something like Amazon Web Services happened. And suddenly you get your own cloud infrastructure within a couple of minutes. And so that sort of is an analogy to what Stripe is doing. Instead of building your own payment infrastructure, you can basically get it with a couple of lines of code. And so this is very much what Stripe has been doing together actually with a set of partners. Some of those actually also investors in Stripe, Visa, MasterCard, American Express, and a few others. And these partners are sort of allowing us to offer this product to businesses. And so now you might wonder, okay, which type of businesses are actually using that? And there the answer is it's basically everything from a two-person startup all the way to a public company. And there are some names here on the slide that you probably are going to even find here on the conference hall. I think there's one thing that cuts across all of those companies and is sort of the unifying factor. And that is sort of a need for speed, as I like to call it. These companies really want to move fast. These companies have a desire to bring product to market quickly, because they're all very, very customer-centric, right? And they know that bringing the solution to market fast matters because they want to iterate, they want to get feedback, they want to improve their services and product over time. And so these people come to us and say, OK, great, 6 months is already ambitious, but actually, can we do this in 4 months? And then when we say, well, it's potentially possible, they will ask, oh, can we even do it in 2 months? And so if you wonder, OK, why is this desire for speed, and why does these companies want to move so fast, I actually have to do a quick detour with you and actually bring you quickly to the world of macroeconomic, which is the definition actually of the GDP, so of basically of the economy and the theory of money. And so for the ones that haven't studied economics, M stands for the supply of money, V for the velocity of money, P for price level, and Y is the real GDP. For the simplicity reasons, let's just simplify the right part to nominal GDP. So if your desire is basically, as ours is, to increase the GDP of the internet, basically the school book will tell you you can basically focus on the supply of money, because velocity is something you can observe but not change. We say it's exactly the opposite, and it's actually the velocity of money that's the problem. And so why do we say that? In the US, for instance, the current interest rates are around about 0. They have just increased a little bit, but for the most part, money has been for free. Europe, same story. You get money for free. Supply of money is clearly plenty. If you have a public company, your stock of the company has most likely reached peak level in the meanwhile. This is the US stock market, but Europe, and private companies, it's actually the same. This is the VC funding. A lot of money going around. Everybody gets money that wants it almost in the tech industry these days. While there's a lot of money, actually you need less money. So in the past, you might have needed a couple of $1 million to start a tech business, 5 million or so in the 2000s. These days, the estimates are more like $50,000. So that's kind of confusing, right? Everybody says if there's more money, GDP should increase, but there's a lot of money already, and people need less of it. So, but still we are here. Still only 5% of the global internet of the global economy has moved online. Still a very small fraction. And with that, it's, I think, quite obvious now that the velocity of money is the issue. So what does it really mean, and what's sort of the velocity here? And let's go for now for an example, and let's just look at a customer-centric person who says, well, I found out there's a niche that nobody has quite covered yet, which is nobody offers a marketplace for some specific type of shoes. Maybe, let's say, some old Adidas sneakers. OK, great. So you have this idea. And you will say, OK, since I'm this in a niche, I probably have to at least address the global internet. Otherwise, I will not have enough buyers. And you say, OK, I want to launch this globally. So I want to be sort of a Katawiki or Etsy or eBay for that particular segment. And the sad part is, while the internet was meant to be global and everything sort of, you should reach those buyers and sellers without any borders, once it comes to payments, all these borders are back. Like, there's so much regulation, there's so much cultural differences, etc., that sort of, in the end, it is quite balkanized again. And you can't just simply go up and sell as easily as you can sell in your home market. So what does it mean for this poor entrepreneur? Again, the idea being let's say, a marketplace. So if you think about what do I want to offer, I want to have these super special shoes. Well, first you need the sellers, right? So you need to find sellers that have those products to offer. Then I need to onboard them to my platform. But since they're somewhere in the world, are they really the person that they claim to be? Or do they want to do something sketchy, like, I don't know, terrorist financing or launder money, like all that bad stuff? So you have to sort of start hiring engineers that build a sort of solution that looks into that and screens those transactions. And then you want to accept the money, which is also complicated because you need to do it on a browser and on a mobile app and all that sort of stuff. And if you have not quite picked up on it yet, as you do a marketplace, that is actually a regulated activity. So if you speak to BaFin in Germany or ACPR in France, they will tell you, oh, please watch out. You might need to have a financial institution license. And then you get people with suits joining your team as well, your newfound startup or your newfound team. And you get more engineers that build all sort of the complexity. And you build a treasury team because you have more countries now. You also want to go to Denmark, and there's a different currency. And you want to go to China. You want to go to Netherlands, where people pay with Ideal. And it goes on and on and on and on. And all you wanted to do was basically build that startup. And what you ended up building, I would say it's a Google Translate for money. Right? And that's not quite what you were set out to do in the first instance. And so once you see all that complexity, I think it becomes quite clear that the velocity of money cannot be at its peak. So that if it's that hard to build a business in a marketplace, you can really see how much friction there still exists. And that's exactly, again, where we come in and where we build a product. In this instance, we call it actually Stripe Connect. It's for marketplaces. It shields you basically from all that, and it's sort of a Lego box with all the pieces you need to build a marketplace. And once you have those pieces, and once you have such a solution, I think we believe those borders really start to disappear again. But a bit less obvious is, once you give entrepreneurs and larger businesses also these tools to build such business models, there's new type of economic infrastructure starting to appear. Because everybody talks about GAFA and Google and Facebook and these companies, and I'm sure, I think as the opening for the CEBIT happened, there was even a discussion about that as well. But here we are talking often about small, long-tail marketplaces that go after certain specific niches and business needs that nobody else caters for. And as they sort of do their work, you see that there's new economic activity happening. Like sellers and buyers find each other that otherwise would not transact with each other. So that really helps the economy and is really beneficial for it. And again, even that might sound abstract, but you can imagine the more nodes there are, the more and easier money can move, the more likely the GDP is to increase. And you see that with examples like Bowser, where you can basically rent a caterpillar that otherwise would not be used, or you can get your horse a ride to the veterinary, or you can support a legal case that you find is worthwhile supporting, or you can get an event organized, or you just maybe buy a wine bottle. Like you can see, it's all these small niches that otherwise would not be served. And maybe as part now, I'm coming to almost to the end of my presentation. Let's maybe actually quickly hear from I think, a really exciting marketplace out of New York. It's called Kickstarter, which is a crowdfunding platform for artists. Like if you have a creative idea, you can basically put your idea online, and other people can basically support that idea or product. Has anyone here already supported a Kickstarter idea? Yeah? Oh, wow, that's quite a lot. OK, that's fantastic. Cool. So let's hear quickly from Kickstarter. They're using Stripe since a while, and I think a very exciting company.
Kickstarter's mission is to bring creative projects to life, and any independent creative person can do that using a community of backers through our crowdfunding platform. We certainly don't think that there are artists and entrepreneurs and innovators only in certain countries. We think that access to the community we provide should be available to people in any country around the world.
With Stripe Connect, we didn't need to build anything from scratch in order to support these different markets or different payment methods. Stripe gives us the ability to focus our product and engineering resources on the more user-facing design and flows, as opposed to thinking about compliance or identity verification. So we're able to funnel our resources from a relatively small team into where we think we can really differentiate on our platform.
Stripe Connect has helped us expand internationally a lot more quickly. In the past, we've had to establish international subsidiaries, which is a lot more complicated. We have to make sure that we're up to date on the regulations, the tax code, have extra sets of books. So Stripe's really alleviated us from having to do all of that internal work and it's kept our team leaner and more effective so that we can fulfill our mission of bringing creators and backers together.
Great. So I think this was a really nice summary of sort of what I just talked about, which is there's new economic activities happening, right? These backers and sellers otherwise would not meet, and these creative projects would probably otherwise not even exist. And at the same time, it's also a good example for customer centricity, because we sort of focus on our customers, which in this case is Kickstarter, so that Kickstarter can focus on their customers, which are these creative people that sort of can build their ideas and bring these creative ideas to the world. And so, again, in a nutshell, the global internet economy is still very small compared to the overall economy. And I think there's a number of barriers: regulatory, technology, cultural. And the entrepreneurs need tools sort of to overcome these hurdles and barriers so that they can get there. And we at Stripe provide these tools and hope to kind of reduce those barriers and make sure that we achieve our mission, which is, again, increasing the GDP of the internet. And so, in turn, allowing our users to focus on their end users. So that's a little bit, I think, the nutshell here. Since we have quite a bit of time still left, I think it would be nice maybe to spend a bit of time on questions, if there are any. So who has questions about Stripe or the mission or the challenges for new businesses or marketplaces? Or any other questions you might have?
If Have we got any for Felix? Any questions? I know there were a couple that I had seen from people in the audience. One was, which sectors have you found to be the easiest to work with, or where you've had, I guess, the most demand from?
I think we saw a lot of interest in the past few years, and let's say the last 2 years in the online demand economy. So if you take, for instance, a business like Deliveroo, I'm not sure whether someone of you has already ordered some food from that type of service. It connects like someone who's the rider with a restaurant with someone that wants to have a food, right? And so there's a lot of those business models. Some of those are more well-known, some of them are smaller. But I think they're quite interesting, and these companies scale really rapidly. I mean, Deliveroo is a company out of the UK, for instance, and they're now in cities as far as Hong Kong and Singapore.
That's right. Yeah, I think everyone has ordered with Deliveroo. And what would you say is the biggest hurdle to what you're trying to do?
So I think the hurdles are plenty, I would say. If you start again with marketplaces, I think a big one that we have talked a lot about with our users in the past months is the PSD2 regulation. Everybody's probably conscious, where there's a lot of strict regulation which basically made it such that a small startup either would have to almost become a bank, or you look for a partner like us. And so that kind of led, of course, to quite a bit of a demand. That's a big challenge that we solve for our users. But there's also others, again, I talked about payment methods, which is a still surprisingly big number, and every country, every culture sort of has their own slight differences there, and so those are typical issues we try to solve.
Okay. Any questions? All right.
Good.
Felix, thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll take it.